I'm somewhat intimidated having followed everyone. I'm sure most of you have no idea who I am. When I met Seth, I was probably 20 years old. I was living on Tucker's floor. And he had no idea who I was either. I was just like some random kid that tagged along to dinner. But it didn't matter to Seth at all. And he treated me like an adult. He answered my questions, and I think what caught me most off guard about it was, like, he asked me questions, like he wanted to know what I thought about things, and that was very Seth. And so someone was asking me like what I was doing this weekend, and I said I was coming up to this memorial service, and they said like, oh, like, you know, who? And I said, oh, it was this scientist that I knew, and his name was Seth Roberts, and that really didn't articulate what Seth was to me, because he was sort of this mentor and this sort of person that I could turn to that made me realize things about myself and then also about the world around me. So what I thought I would do to sort of close this out, I think I'm the last speaker, right? I thought I would say 3 things that I learned from Seth and then one other thing that I learned from Seth. And the first was very practical. It's made my life way better, and that was just put butter on everything. You know, like put it on steak that I had last night, I put it on the eggs that I had this morning. You know, it's interesting, like, you know, now, you know, butter's on the cover of Time magazine. You know, people are making millions of dollars putting butter in people's coffee, and that was all Seth, right? Like Seth was one of the people that sort of put that idea out there, and not just that idea. It's why I take flaxseed. You know, it's why I like pork belly and all sorts of interesting, like, little practical things about my diet and about my life. Like, I know my fiance Seth wrote about everything, right? She had like an acne remedy that I know that she uses, and I think where that comes from is the second thing that I learned from Seth, which everyone that came before me has talked about in one way or another, which is don't care what other people think about you at all. And there's 2 favorite stories I have about Seth in that regard. And the first was at the first Ancestral Health Symposium. I remember I was standing in the back, and I look up, and you know, it's a much bigger crowd than this. And Seth is standing right in the front, standing on one leg. And my instinct is like, Seth, like, what are you doing? Like, you look so weird. Like, there's people around. Like, don't you know? Like, it's fine if you want to like do this experiment where you stand on your leg in your own bedroom. Like, no one will know about it, and that's fine. But he didn't. He would do it anywhere, and he would do it in front of people, and he wouldn't care. And it's that sort of like everyday courageousness that I think was something I respected a great deal about Seth. And another one, so I gave Seth a tour of the American Apparel Factory like 4 or 5 years ago when I was the director of marketing there, and he loved the factory. And when he left, I gave him this sweatshirt, and he was like so blown away by this sweatshirt. That, you know, it cost like $20 or something. I was like, here, take this. And every time I talked to him since then, he would tell me that he was wearing the sweatshirt. And after a certain point, it was like, Seth, like, that sweatshirt is like 4 years old. If you're wearing it, it must be full of holes. And I'm sure it was full of holes. I mean, like, look at the shirt that he's wearing. It's all wrinkly. And like, Seth, he didn't care about appearances because he cared about big ideas, and he didn't care about impressing. Like, what mattered is sort of what Tucker was talking about. He cared about impressing the people that he cared about and doing great work. And he didn't care about the things that I think take up so much of everyone else's time, you know, mine included. And that leads me to my third point, which is something that I've now that I've sort of got my own career and I've written my own books, and you know, everyone that does work is you always want to know about credit, and you want it to have an audience, and you want it to be successful. What I think was so unique about Seth is Seth deeply believed that just doing good work was enough. Like, if you look at the people who spoke, the people who are here today, the people who wrote about Seth, you know, when the news came out that he'd passed away, it's some of the most influential people in economics, in science, in health and fitness, in entrepreneurship. And how did these people know about Seth? It's like Seth didn't have a self-promotional bone in his body. He couldn't market his work. He had no interest in doing so. As Tim pointed out, his blog was a random like typepad template that he hadn't updated since he first started it. he did none of that. But the fact that he did real work that made people think, that was full of provocative ideas that were smart and interesting, that's what made Seth's name spread widely. It wasn't that he was great at social media, or that he was great at networking, or that he had a great book agent, or he did any of these things. I mean, Seth had a New York Times best-selling book, and I don't think he knows why or how that happened. It's just because it was a good book about an interesting idea that other smart people saw and popularized. And Tim is a great example of someone who popularized Seth's work. And he did it not because he was trying to do some favor for Seth, but because the work was good. And I think Seth was very old school in that sense. Like, he wanted to do his science and his work and his experiments and come up with things that made the world better. And he knew that everything else would take care of itself. And I think what's so great about his story is that he was right, because it did take care of itself. And I think the rest of us, when we're doing our work, it's like, oh yeah, like, I know that the work is what matters, but I also have to do this marketing stuff because it's this sort of arms race. And Seth opted out of that, and he was vindicated in that. And I respect that a great deal about him. And it's something I try to think about when I'm judging, my own product. And then the last thing that I learned from Seth, this is a little more personal, but I think it's a good note to go out on. About 3 days before Seth died, he sent me an email. And I remember, because I found out that he died after, so I sort of remembered what happened. He sent me this email, and I'd gotten a bunch of email that day, and I remember I marked it with a star in Gmail, and I said, well, that's personal. I'm going to deal with that later. So I've got a bunch of work that I have to do. And God knows what dumb, pointless, utterly, forgettable emails I responded to instead of that. Maybe I watched TV that night, or I did a bunch of other things that don't matter that I put in front of responding to an email from my friend. And because it was an email, I think I allowed myself to justify. Like, if Seth had called me, I wouldn't have taken 3 days to get back to him. And who knows when I would have responded to the email. It just went, sort of the bottom of the pile. And I think, I bet there's a lot of people in this room that struggle with managing their inboxes, or they have autoresponders or a system, and I know I have that too. But somehow that system is designed to make you do more work, or to be more efficient with your work, not to connect with the people that are important to you, or the people that have made your life better, or that are just reaching out to you, that want to talk to you. And so that's something I'll always regret, that I sort of lost that chance to talk to Seth one last time. It turns out, the email that I'd not responded to was a column that he was submitting to a publication that I work for, that was an amazing column that I should have read. And, on the one hand, email is this thing. It's how we find out about work and clients and, junk mail. It's overwhelming for sure, but it's also how we connect with friends and family, and these things matter, and you don't know how much time you're going to get with people. And I don't want to be like a lesson to anyone, but it's something I regret. It's a mistake that I don't want to make again. And I'm sure Seth would have understood, and he didn't sweat it. But the point is, when these people reach out to you, it's important, and you can't, you have, if it's a priority, you have to make it a priority, and I wish I'd done that. And it was not a great end to a relationship that changed my life in so many ways. It made it better in so many ways. And, regardless of him being here or not, is going to continue to make my life better, because whatever I'm going to eat today is going to probably have butter on it. And, my joints feel better, and all there's studies that connect, omega-3 with depression and all sorts of things that are better because of the little experiments that Seth did, that he shared with the world, and he didn't care whether they made him look ridiculous or not. He just knew that it would help people's lives. So thank you.